The verse of refuge is to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. I go for refuge until enlightenment. Those two lines encapsulate refuge. And the next two lines of that verse are through the collections from my practice of generosity and so forth, may I attain Buddhahood to help all sentient beings. Essentially saying whatever virtue I accumulate, I direct towards Buddhahood. So we've covered this. We've covered the refuge part of it, but to look a little bit more in depth at the second two lines, which relate to Bodhicitta, we're going to do that on the basis of the Guru Puja verses, which we started in the last class, because you're familiar with them and you do the Guru Puja once or twice a month. So far, what we've covered is that in this section of the Guru Puja, so we're talking, depending on your edition, around verse 90 to 100 onwards. It talks about equalizing and exchanging oneself and others, and the sevenfold cause and effect process, which are both lineages of practice to develop bodhicitta. And what the Guru Puja does is it blends those two lineages. So if one engages in a profound practice of equalizing and exchanging oneself with others, one does give rise to fully qualified bodhicitta. But even if one doesn't end up there from this practice, through your basic understanding of it and familiarization with it, what happens is, instead of our norm, where we totally cherish ourselves over others and we prioritize our own resources and welfare over that of others, we start to shift the balance and appreciate and cherish others more than ourselves. So if we can understand this in a basic fundamental way and familiarize ourselves, so we can receive vast blessings from this practice. If we continue off from our last session, so in your orange booklet, we should be up to verse 100. In the FPMT booklet, it's verse 90. The verse is, there is no difference between myself and others. None of us wishes for even the slightest of sufferings, or is ever content with the happiness we have. Realizing this, I seek your blessings that I may generate joy for the happiness of others. So each of the following verses finishes with the line, please bless me to have such and such. So the reason for that is because up until now in this Guru Puja, one has visualized the Lama in front of yourself and is requesting blessings. And here you're requesting blessings for thought transformation. So here in this verse, it's describing how our situation now is that we prioritize and cherish ourselves over others. But this is wrong for the following two reasons. First, that we are the same in that none of us wishes for even the slightest of sufferings. And two, that none of us are ever content with the happiness we have. So we're all in the same situation. And realizing this, I seek your blessings that I may generate joy for the happiness of others. So engendering a sense of love that wishes happiness for others. When we talk about self and others, self is just one, it's just you. And others are countless. So for example, if you sacrifice the welfare of 100 people to achieve the welfare of one, in general, that's considered a very bad thing. Nobody would agree with that. Whereas if you do good for 100 while sacrificing the welfare of one, that would be praised as a good thing to do. But despite that, we are in a situation where we as one consider our welfare more important than that of countless others. But why is that? And that's because of self-cherishing, which is described as a chronic disease in the next verse, 101. It says, this chronic disease of self-cherishing is the cause giving rise to my unsought suffering. Perceiving this, I seek your blessings to blame, begrudge, and destroy the monstrous demon of selfishness. So normally when we encounter a difficulty or someone harms us, we point the finger outwards and we blame someone else. We say, he hurt me. But in this case, we're beseeching the Guru to bestow blessings, to recognize that the blame lies with our self-cherishing, and to therefore begrudge that, to hold a grudge against self-cherishing and not others, and to destroy this monstrous demon of selfishness. So verse 101 is essentially talking of the faults of self-cherishing. In verse 92, it now talks about the qualities of cherishing others. 92 in FPMT, 102 for you. So the mind that cherishes mothers and places them in bliss is the gateway leading to infinite qualities. Seeing this, I seek your blessings to cherish these migratory beings more than my life, even should they rise up as my enemies. So here, Lama Chöpa is mixing the pith instructions of equalizing and exchanging oneself with others and the lineage of the sevenfold cause and effect instructions. So therefore it's centered on mother sentient beings. So we beseech the Guru to bless us to change our attitude so that we cherish all mother sentient beings more than ourselves and recognize that that is the gateway to all qualities, right? To the qualities of all bodhisattvas and Buddhas. And having seen that cherishing all mother sentient beings is that gateway to all qualities, it says, I seek your blessings to cherish them more than my life, even if they rise up as my enemies. So even if every single sentient being may hurt me, may I still consider them most precious. So reading down to verse 103. In brief, infantile beings labor only for their own ends, while the able ones work solely for the welfare of others. With a mind understanding the distinction between the failings of one and the advantages of the other, I seek your blessings to enable me to equalize and exchange myself with others. So the analogy here is of the able ones, but that's essentially referring to the sages, the munis, right? For example, like Shakyamuni Buddha. He was first just like us. He was cycling in samsara. He was a hell being, an animal, a human, and so on, just like us. So how did he become an object of our prostration and worship now? Well, that's because he stopped being an infantile being laboring for his own ends and became one who worked solely for the welfare of others, right? Right now, our situation is such that we are stuck here due to our self-cherishing and laboring for our own ends, tricking and deceiving others in order to achieve our goals. But Buddha Shakyamuni reversed this, and he sacrificed himself for the welfare of all others. So us being left behind in samsara for the reason that we cherish ourselves more than others need to recognize the benefits of cherishing others more than ourselves. And it's hard to switch those. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, I'll continue from there. So Buddha Shakyamuni became an object of our veneration because he switched these two attitudes. He cherished others more than himself, and he sacrificed his own welfare for the sake of all others. So the reason we are stuck in samsara is because we have not shifted our attitude of cherishing ourselves more than others. So here we beseech the Guru that we may equalize and exchange ourselves with others and swap those two attitudes so that we may cherish others more than ourselves. And it is a very hard thing to do at first. Of course, it's hard to go against what we are so strongly habituated with, but slowly, slowly, we are able to do so. The next verse reads, cherishing myself is the doorway to all loss, while cherishing my mothers is the foundation of all qualities. Hence, I seek your blessings to enable me to equalize and exchange myself with others. So we're still talking about the faults of cherishing ourselves and the qualities of cherishing others. And if you look at those, you realize that self-cherishing is the cause of all my problems, the cause of all loss, while cherishing others is the root of all that is good. So please bless me to swap these attitudes. So if we think in the world, those whom we respect the most, who we consider the ones who are truly in service, live in service of humanity and are worthy of our respect, are those people who we recognize as kind-hearted people. And therefore we respect them regardless of their race, regardless of their religion, because they are worthy of such respect for having that quality of kind-heartedness where they cherish the welfare of others. So the next verse, 105, says, "And thus, perfect, pure, compassionate Guru, I seek your blessings that all negativities, obscurations, and sufferings of mother migrators may ripen without exception upon me right now, and that by giving my happiness and virtues to others, all migrators may experience happiness." So this verse is obviously talking about the practice of giving and taking, or tonglen, which you've probably heard about because it's quite a famous and well-known practice within Buddhism. So the second line says, "I seek your blessings that all negativities, obscurations, and sufferings of mother migrators ripen upon me right now." So that's what you are visualizing, you are taking from other beings. And you take it upon yourself in the sense you pile all of that negativity on top of your own self-cherishing, which we have identified as the enemy or the demon before. So that gets piled up on top of that. And in the practice of giving, one sends out one's happiness and virtue to others. So our happiness is something that finishes up, right? The virtue is what causes future happiness. So we give these two, right? We visualize that other sentient beings are receiving that. It's good if you can do the tonglen or giving and taking practice, but it's one that you should be careful of when you do it. You shouldn't do it in a way that you really force yourself and really strain yourself to do it for a long period of time, because it can lead to psychophysical issues. Okay, so reading down. Okay, oh sorry, before we read down. So when you do the giving and taking meditation, here it says that I seek your blessings that all negativities, obscurations, and sufferings of others ripen upon me right now. So when we visualize all the negativity of others coming onto ourselves, it's understandably quite a scary thing to think about, right? It's definitely off-putting to think in such a way at first. The next verse, however, says, even if the environment and beings are filled with the fruits of negativity and unwished for sufferings pour down like rain, I seek your blessings to take these miserable conditions as a path by seeing them as causes to exhaust the results of my negative karma. So if one is a real practitioner of bodhicitta, one can take such negativity upon oneself and transform it into the path. We as beginners, however, will definitely have problems doing that. For example, as beginners, when we encounter any sort of problem or obstacle, our normal composed countenance that we present to others usually fails, right? We should try not to let it do so. We should try to remain composed when we face obstacles. And as practitioners, when we encounter difficulties, we should not transgress the boundaries of karmic causality. and do the wrong thing, and we should retain our refuge. That being said, transforming difficult situations into the path is a high level practice, right? It's not easy, but through familiarization, if such things happen, one can think, I take these upon myself and accept them because I see them as causes to exhaust the results of my negative karma. So think of it as your karma exhausting. Right, last year in the Lojong teachings that I gave here, we went through and identified the negative karmic causes for certain experiences of suffering. So you can connect it like so. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so we're up to verse 107. In short, no matter what appearances arise, be they good or bad, I seek your blessings to transform them into a path increasing the two bodhicittas. Are we up there? Yes, through the practice of the five forces, the quintessence of the entire Dharma, and thus to meditate only on mental happiness. So this verse talks about the five forces, which I explained in the last class of the Lojong teachings last year. And these five forces are said to encapsulate all of the Mahayana Dharma, all teachings. So for example, if you start with the first force, which is the force of motivation, that we've covered when we spoke about refuge, right? It's setting a good motivation before you engage in an act. So at best, if you have a motivation of refuge before you do something, what you do turns into a Buddhist practice, right? It becomes a Buddhist Dharma. If not, at the very least, you should do it with a motivation of altruism, right? At best, you would do it with both. So the second is the power of habituation. And here you have plenty of opportunity for habituating yourself with Dharma. For example, you have the opportunity to listen to the teachings, to read Dharma books. And as we know, at first you might superficially understand a word or a sentence or a passage, but there's so much more depth of meaning you can gain from these by delving into them more and more through more habituation with more teachings. It's like the layers of an onion. You can keep peeling them back and reveal more and more layers. So that's the power of habituation. The third is the power of the white seed, which essentially boils down to accumulation of merit and purification of obscurations. And the best practice to do this is rejoicing. It is the most easiest way to accumulate merit. You can do it even while you're lying comfortably in your own bed, right? Just by rejoicing in the virtues of others. You can accumulate, for example, like half of the merit they accumulated by doing that act of virtue. It's important to do it without jealousy, right? But there's also a risk that rejoicing can increase your pride, which we need to try to avoid, right? Because you can rejoice in all that you have done as well, all the virtue you have done, for example, serving the Dharma Center, all virtuous activities you've engaged in throughout your whole lifetime, you can rejoice in. But don't let that serve as a fuel for your pride. So generally, rejoicing is an antidote to jealousy. And it's considered one of the greatest virtues that one can engage in. And counter to that, we need to avoid the grossest, coarsest, worst misdeeds that can destroy all of our virtue, which are, for example, anger. As I said, a moment of anger can destroy all roots of virtues. So while thinking of accumulating great merit, we also need to try to avoid that which destroys it all. And for a couple of classes, I also took you through a meditation on the Buddha's image, and I would really like to emphasize that this is a practice you should be doing. Don't let it go. Keep doing it. Because this is a practice that can actually enhance your bodhicitta, right? Not just to accumulate merit, but also enhance your bodhicitta. Because while you're meditating on the image of the Buddha, you're focusing on the qualities of the Buddha and Buddhahood. And bodhicitta is a mind that aspires to achieve the qualities of Buddhahood. So it acts as a way to strengthen your bodhicitta. And it also helps day to day, right? In your day to day life. If you think of Buddha Shakyamuni as like your parent, right? Just as you would be ashamed to do this and that action, thinking that your parents would be disappointed in you, likewise, you will come to avoid this or that negativity by remembering Buddha Shakyamuni. Okay, so after we've corrected our motivation, we then perform our prayers, right? A refuge and bodhicitta prayers. Um, then, when we move on to meditate on Buddha Shakyamuni's image, for example, you can recite whatever you prefer during that meditation. Some of you will prefer to recite the refuge verse or Tayatha or Muni Muni and so forth. Some will prefer to recite the Migzema verse and so on and so forth. You can choose some foundational verse like that, or even if you have memorized Ganden Lagyama, which we recite before class, you could recite that as well while you maintain this meditation of Buddha Shakyamuni's image. So that essentially is the practice of the power of the white seed, right? Merit accumulation and purification of obscurations. The fourth is the power of eradication, it's sometimes called, to stop yourself committing non-virtues. And the fifth is the power of prayer. So, for example, there's this verse that's very famous in Tibet that we've historically recited during times of decline of Buddhism in society. So the verse is, throughout all my lifetimes, may I never be separated from the three jewels. May I continue to worship the three jewels, and may I be blessed by the three jewels. There's two slightly different versions of this verse, but that's essentially it. And this verse has been recited even at the time of the Tibetan Empire when it started to collapse and there was a decline of Buddhism. Prayer time was set aside to recite this verse. And likewise, after the invasion of Tibet in 59, during the 60s, people were encouraged to recite this verse, right? All people in all families. So it's a very powerful verse. And one is praying that one is never separated from the three jewels throughout all lifetimes and continues to worship them, and also to receive their blessings in every lifetime. So asking again that the three jewels transform our minds for the better, right? That's essentially what a blessing is. It's a transformative power. And then other dedication prayers that you commonly know and recite, for example, Changchu Simchu Rinpoche, which you recite in Tibetan, but it's may the supreme jewel of bodhicitta that has not been born arise, and may that which has arisen not decline and increase forevermore. And likewise, there's one that you seem to be reciting in English, which is just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realized things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. So this is a fantastic and incredibly important dedication prayer to recite, because you're essentially saying, may I emulate all past Buddhas and pray in the way that they prayed and make dedications in the way that they did too. Right? Just like you would emulate a good friend who has very good behavior. You wish to emulate the behavior of these Buddhas. So that's a fantastic one I encourage you to recite as a dedication prayer. So we've gone through correcting motivation, doing the prayers, and concluding with the dedication prayers, which was my assigned topic. So I believe we've covered that in depth, and I'll leave that here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And after this, we'll do the Lama Chopa talk.
Ashitale Rinpoche, how can we stay in a clear mind and constantly taking refuge while we sleep?
Okay.
And second question, when we wake up, how can we avoid the body to be very stiff and like a rocks and can be relaxed and in a transcendental states?
Okay, I'm not quite sure what you mean by the body being in a transcendental state, but I think I got the gist of your question though. So as for your first question, it was how to sleep with a clear mind and maintain refuge. So generally, sleep can be one of those mental states that is, a little bit lazy or whatever. But there's a point in sleep where your mind also becomes quite powerful and concentrated. And beings of high realization can utilize that subtle mind of sleep for their practice, right? They can do things such as also give and receive Dharma teachings and interact with other high level beings, but that's not a practice for us, right? The best we can do, as far as I see it, is to set a really good motivation before we go to sleep each night, and that transforms our sleep into virtue. So your second question, I'm not too sure about waking up not stiff and being relaxed. I'm not too sure what's meant by that, but I have said before that when we do wake up, rather than staying in sort of a sleepy attitude, we should immediately get up, wash our face, do a bit of exercise if that's part of our daily plan, and just freshen ourselves up, right? If we freshen up our body, then we freshen up our mind, and we carry that freshness throughout the day. So I'll leave those questions there. And just to say some concluding words, I came here and I was asked to teach on this topic, and the plan was to do 8 classes, but we only had 7 because I got ill. But otherwise, I think we've completed it well. And I think, yeah, I'm happy with how it's gone. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to all the workers and volunteers at the Dharma Center who have helped organize my stay and these teachings. You've done it in a really impressive, high-level way, I have to say. And you've also been incredibly caring towards me as well. So I'm very much appreciative of that. And my wish to you, something that I would like to express to you guys, is that you don't leave this introduction as it is and accept that it's enough and be satisfied with it. I want you to understand that this explanation has not been very deep. It should not satisfy you, and that you should continue to study and ask questions. You have an excellent geshe here that you can ask questions to. And it's also important to know that Buddhism is a religion that you can question. It's always been encouraged within Buddhism to question the tenets, the views, the philosophy. So I encourage you to do so. And please do not, as I said, don't leave your studies here, but pursue them. And yeah, please continue. So we'll leave it there.